Welcome to the Deep Wealth Podcast, where you learn how to extract your business and personal deep wealth. I'm your host, Jeffrey Feldberg. This podcast is brought to you by Deep Wealth and the 90-Day Deep Wealth Experience. When it comes to your business deep wealth, your exit or liquidity event is the most important financial decision of your life. But unfortunately, up to 90% of liquidity events fail. Think about all that time and your hard-earned money wasted. Of the quote-unquote successful liquidity events, most business owners leave 50% to over 100% of the deal value in the buyer's pocket and don't even know it. I should know. I said no to a seven-figure offer and yes to mastering the art and the science of a liquidity event. 2 years later, I said yes to a different buyer with a 9-figure deal. Are you thinking about an exit or liquidity event? Don't become a statistic and make the fatal mistake of believing the skills that built your business are the same ones to sell it. After all, how can you master something you've never done before? Let the 90-Day Deep Wealth Experience and the 9-step roadmap of preparation help you capture the best deal instead of any deal. At the end of this episode, take a moment and hear from business owners like you who went through the Deep Wealth Experience. Major General Scott Clancy served as a tactical helicopter pilot in the Canadian Armed Forces. He taught tactics at the Army Staff College and planned operations at all Royal Canadian Air Force levels. Before retiring after a 37-year career, he served as the Deputy Commander of the Alaskan NORAD Region and finally as the Director of Operations for all NORAD in Colorado Springs. Welcome to the Deep Wealth Podcast, and you heard it in the official introduction. We have a terrific guest lined up for you today, and I have a rhetorical question for you. As a business owner, as a founder, as a mover and shaker, as I like to say, show me your team and I'll tell you your future. So how's the leadership in your company? How are you as a leader? What are you doing with that? Would you like to take that to the next level? You know me, I love my rhetorical questions. And of course you said yes. So with that in mind, I'm going to put a plug in it right there. Scott, welcome to the Deep Wealth Podcast. I am really excited to have you on today. And Scott, there is always a story behind the story. I'm curious, Scott, what's your story? What got you from where you were to where you are today?
Thanks very much for having me, Jeffrey. I've been looking forward to this for a little bit. So I served 37 years in the Royal Canadian Air Force. I wanted to join ever since I was a little kid and was a helicopter pilot as my basic training. That's the core skill that I developed. But I was an officer, so I was a leader. And throughout my 37 years, led all sorts of teams. I spent the better part of the last decade in the North American Aerospace Defense Command, leading the binational team alongside of our American brethren in the allied positions, whether it was up in Alaska or down in Colorado. Mm-hmm. And at the same time, I was coaching my kids in basketball. A lot of us get into coaching because we love our kids, want to be that parent coach. And then I started, because I played college basketball, I coached them all the way up. And then I started coaching elite teams and all the way up to university level with the Royal Military College. Mm-hmm. And once I left the military, I wanted to retire, spend more time with my family, that kind of stuff. But at the same time, this idea about writing a book kind of got into the back of my head because I saw the confluence, the intersection of coaching and leading, between that coaching sports thing and the leading stuff. And so I wrote this book, Developing Coaching Leaders. And that's kind of what's brought me to this point, is being a thought leader and being able to bring these two worlds of leadership and coaching together.
Absolutely love that. And Scott, before we get going, as I really, on behalf of the community, I really want to thank you for your service. Not easy, but because you do what you do, we get to do what we do. And thank you so much for your sacrifice, your time, and the effort that went into that. And I'm wondering though, when you reflect back on life in the services and how life in the business world, on the one hand, is very different. On the other hand, I suspect is very similar. What are some of the similarities that you're taking from the services and you're bringing into the business world that perhaps we need more of?
I think that one of the core things that both our militaries are dealing with right now and our business communities is this employee or member loyalty, where you see people that are just They want to move on to the next thing. What's the next move that I can make in my development, on my journey, on my path? And you don't see the longevity. Nobody's serving with the same companies or even in our militaries for 30, 40 years. They want to know what's the next thing that's servicing them. And I think there's not new solutions to this. I actually think there's a lot of old solutions to this. That's why fundamentals, I'm a basketball coach, so fundamentals are important. I think a return back to fundamentals is important. So when I think about employee loyalty, I think about how we've developed our employees. Are we just focusing on the performance, or are we elevating the relationship that we have with our employees above that transactional performance-based stuff to one where we're actually leading them through their development? And by doing that deep trust that you have, I say that leadership and coaching are emotional trust relationships. And if you think about these things as relationships, I think that what the military and my experience in leading in the military and then in coaching and around business has to bring together is to try to develop those skills where you can develop your people within your organizations, develop their leadership. Because it's not just about your leadership as you're leading an organization. It's about how you develop those other leaders by doing. That's where I think that there's a crossover to the business world.
And in your book, and let's talk about this for a moment because it's so important. And by the way, for our listeners, in the show notes, we'll have a link to the book, Developing Coaching Leaders, the Fundamentals and Techniques that Make Leaders Extraordinary. Absolutely love that, by the way, Scott, in terms of how you're positioning that. Let's learn from the military, though, because when you think about it in the military, regardless of where you are in the services, you're building that trust because people are putting their lives on the line with the service that they're in, with their peers that are with them. That's a big ask, and yet it's done on a regular basis. So what are the services, the military, what's happening there that as business leaders we can learn from with that emotional trust that you're talking about?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say that there's an absolute similarity between the fact that people will follow you just so far as a military leader, especially in combat, as compared to business. In business, people will only follow you until it's not in their best interest, and then they're gone. And in the military, it's the same thing. You can try to use your rank, your authority, all the rest of those things. But when their lives are on the line, it's your influence as a leader, their belief in you, their trust in you, and their belief and trust in the mission. Those are the things that are going to take them over the line. So in business, when you think about what the purpose of your business is, you're going to have to align that purpose with individual purpose for the people, the employees that you're leading. And if you can align those things and they can trust you that you're going to develop them and you have their best interests at heart, then those are the things that are going to translate well. So to me, I think these are the same things. And I think that the militaries that are dealing with retention issues, real retention issues, especially here in Canada, we have some real significant recruiting and retention problems on years of backlogs. The same thing is starting to manifest in the United States. These are identical to the business problems that I hear from business leaders that are saying there's not enough qualified people. The Great Resignation is as much about finding a tempo of life that is more serving the people than it is serving the organizations. And these are all the same related symptoms of the same problem.
And what I loved in the book, you make a very clear distinction with a leader. And Scott, I have to share with you a pet peeve of mine. People will interchangeably use leader and manager. And to me, they couldn't be more different. And for our listeners right now, you can't see this, but Scott and I were seeing each other. And as soon as I said that, Scott was like, whoa, he's back. And the body language is, yeah, I'm with you on that, Jeffrey. Because you say something interesting in the book. You're saying, and you can tell me if I'm on base or off base with this, but I'm quoting, a leader is anyone who is attempting to move a team toward a goal. I love that definition. Can you expand upon that for us? Because it really applies not just to the military, the services, to business, really any area where you're in a leadership position. So give us some of your insights, the story behind the story on that one, Scott.
Two things through my body language. And I agree that there's a division and a distinction between merely supervising or managing and that managing function, which I would say is a tool of leading and leading. And I like the phrase, anyone can lead. I used to use this when I was coaching basketball with young fellers that, well, they're young when they're 11, 12, 13, but when they're,
Yeah.
18, 19, 21, and they're 6'7", it doesn't seem to be talking about them as kids. But the idea here is that anyone can lead at any moment. And you might have a team. You might be the manager or supervisor, but in that moment, the one that's really stepping up and leading that team is someone from within. So that's why I say that anyone can be leading in any moment, moving that team towards a goal. I like the idea of saying that you also have to lead yourself. You have to be in that mindset. And then you as a leader need to understand that you're always a member of a larger team. Almost everyone, even if you're a CEO, you're the member of a larger community. Whether it's a community of like-minded businesses or in a town area or whatever it is, you're always a member of a team as well. So to me, that's why I like that definition of leadership. Anyone moving towards a goal. Manager or supervisor, those are more functions. Those are more skill sets and things that you have to be able to do to effectively lead.
And as you're talking about this, what you're reminding me of, Scott, of what you've learned, what you put into practice yourself. And I'm sure it wasn't a bed of roses for you. You learned along the way that, hey, nobody's perfect. And at the same time, though, we, through you and you through the services of the military, have the benefit of, I mean, I can't imagine how many billions, dare I say trillions of dollars that the militaries around the world have put into this area of leadership. How do we get the most out of our people? How do we get them to really put their lives on the line when it counts and when we need them to? How do we build, as you're saying, that emotional trust? Can you give us perhaps a bit of background of what's going on in the military in terms of the research that they're doing and how they're taking that and applying it, and some of your takeaways being in that system when you were there and what you learned from that?
You're absolutely right. Most militaries spend a significant amount of time focusing on leadership. Different militaries, different orientations with respect to what it takes to lead people. Colin Powell's very famously said, and very emphatically, that trust was the number one trait or characteristic that needed to be developed in leaders in order to be effective leaders. Most Western militaries are using a values-based leadership model that leaders have to display and be trusted with the values of the organization, as well as the competence to be able to lead, manage, as well their teams to success. You see this everywhere. Charles Feltman, who's my favorite author on trust, wrote The Thin Book of Trust. And I like thin books because they're easy to read, right?
Sure.
Ones with pictures are even better.
Yes.
Right? And Charles Feltman, he divided out trust into 4 competencies: care, reliability, sincerity, and competence. And a lot of people will misjudge and think that, well, if I trust you, I trust that you can do the job. I think that's only one part of being able to do it. But I don't think you can divide those things out. Yeah, you have to be competent to be able to affect that, but you also have to care for the people that are around you, care for the mission, be reliable and sincere in what you're doing. These elements of trust, these are core values that you'll see in almost all militaries. Now, the problem that I saw, and we can laud a lot of benefits on the militaries, whether it's American, Canadian, or whomever. One of the things that I think that a lot of people need to know why military leaders end up, a lot of them being so good leaders or great leaders, is that they're put in these leadership positions from a very young age, and they learn a lot through trial and error and mentorship, where there's someone above them that's saying, that's not right. Here's an example, lead by example. Here's the example I'm showing you. But a lot of this is mistakes that are made along the way. I know I made my share of mistakes. What I have found in my 37 years in the military, however, is I don't think we're doing as great a job as everybody thinks we could do with respect to deliberately preparing leaders, as opposed to just throwing them into positions, much like our business leaders. I read a lot about business leaders that the first time that they were put in a management or supervisory position, ergo a leadership position, they were given no training, no experience. They were just told to do that on top of their already crushing workload, just sort it out. And that trial and error methodology, that can get you some success, but it's got a lot of problems, especially for the other people in the team. So I think that this is where I was. That's why I wanted to write the book, is I saw a lot of leaders, especially even in the military. A lot of my professional development courses started with, we know you all know how to lead. Do you? Really? I thought that's what I was here for. I thought you were going to teach me something. And then they go on to other managerial or strategic thinking kind of professional development. And you're going, wait a minute, I think we should get back to the basic roots of leadership here a little bit. And that's another reason why I wrote this book.
And I love that. And actually, you're reading my mind in terms of what I wanted to speak with you about today, because I would love to hear, what was it that had you say, you know what, I'm seeing something that clearly isn't right for me, or doesn't feel right, or things aren't working out that well, or there's an issue here. Let me try and fix that. And in your case, it was, let me put together a book that can help people make a difference out there. So Scott, what was it that really spurred you into action to write a book? Because let's face it, writing a book is not an easy thing to do. It's challenging. You're putting yourself out there. It's a whole new area for you in terms of what you were doing, a whole new skill set that you mastered. So what was it that got you into action and say, yes, I'm going to make a difference out there. I'm going to address this issue. I'm going to be a voice out there to solve this problem? What's going on with that?
Thank you very much for that. I mean, I'm really proud of being able to have written the book, having the support of my lovely wife, Val. That's probably one of the great reasons of me being able to do that as well. I also just retired from the military. So there was a space there. Whenever you make a transition, there's a loss of identity that happens. Even if you're moving from one job to the next, not taking a little bit of time to reflect on that and being self-aware about that. And my last 5 or 10 years in the military, I'd spent a lot more time pondering on the bigger things about self-awareness, about the different styles of leadership, all the rest of those things, and doing a lot of journaling and meditation and thinking on this. So that when I left the service, all of these things started to come together. But I also had, and this is where we go back to leading and coaching, the Veterans Affairs Canada organization assigned me a transition coach. And this coach, like all great coaches, coached me in by holding a mirror up to those things that I wanted to do in retirement and working for a big company and consulting and talking about the defense of North America and all those things. That wasn't really something that was appealing to me. That's kind of why I left the military. I was kind of done with that, and I'd had enough, and it was a stressful thing. But I also wanted to give back. My lifelong thing had always been a sense of service, and service before self, which is one of the fundamental values of the Canadian Armed Forces and most militaries. To me, I always wanted to be of service and give back to a nation, community, leaders, and people that have been so good to me. And the nation of Canada and the United States had been so good to me. So those are the kind of reasons that led me to reading the book. And I definitely had something to say.
Absolutely love that. Love that passion. I mean, after all, whether it's a book, whether it's a business, as an entrepreneur, as business owners, which we all are here, you and I, and in the community, for me, really, an entrepreneur, the very foundation of being an entrepreneur or business owner, let's find a painful problem that people are going through. Let's solve it for them. Let's make the world a better place through our insights and through our actions. And so from the services now to the corporate world, Scott, I'm wondering, as you're out there, and you're speaking with different business leaders and organizations, is it the Pareto's Law? Is it the 80-20 rule where 80% of the issues and the challenges that you're hearing about from these organizations are coming from the same 20% of the root causes? Are there any commonalities out there that you can share with us?
Yeah, sure. I think that, yes, my 80-20 rule was always 80% of the work's being done by 20% of the people. But I get what you're saying about the 80-20 rule. I think it's true. I think that there are some root causes here that really organizations, whether we're dealing with large organizations that have thousands of people in them, or even small businesses, I go back to when I speak to those people on the bottom ends of those pyramids, they feel disconnected from where the organization or business is going. And that disconnection, that breeds distrust. And now they're looking for what's in it for them. So the first thing that I keep on going back to is this emotional trust relationship. So if it's a relationship as leaders, first thing we have to do is establish a connection. And I tell leaders, whether it's executive or middle managers or brand new leaders, connect two ways. You want to connect with the people in your organization, the people on your team. So if you're leading a team of 20, then you need to have an individual connection and relationship with each one of those 20 people on that team. And that's going to take time. And you have to develop a plan to be able to do that. And the second thing you need to do is you need to connect them with the mission of, or the goals, the objectives of the organization. Now, that connection, that second connection, people are not just going to say, oh, great, I'm an accountant, I fill out these spreadsheets, and you want me to connect with the spreadsheet? I'm done with you. Like, I mean, that's a hard sell to be able to make. Like, I'll do my job, you'll pay me, but it's very transactional. What I'm trying to say is where we're going here with this. If the employee's name is, I don't know, Mary, I know we have to get our reports in. We have to do these things, but this is why it's important. This is where the organization's going. Now, for you, you're a brand new CPA. This is how I see the evolution and progression. And we're going to come back and visit this because I see you replacing me. What I'm doing there is I'm not talking about the transactional elements of this individual's performance. I'm connecting them to where the organization's going, but from a developmental point of view. This is how you're going to develop inside of this organization carrying forward. What you're demonstrating there, and this isn't a show, this is what you're doing. What you're doing is you're showing care for the individual. You're showing value added because you're showing them how they fit into the larger cogs of the organization. It's going to enable their performance, but it's also going to enable them to go, oh, yes, I do want to develop that way, but I need this course. I might need this time off or whatever it is. And the conversation that happens from there is going to assist in that first connection because you've established a personal connection with that individual. It's about their development and their growth. The more that you carry that on, whether it's in business or whether it's in sports, personal lives, that is elevating that relationship above that transactional element.
And so, Scott, what you've shared, you're really helping me connect the dots because you're taking what some people would say common sense, but you know what? It's not so common. So tell me if I'm on base or off base. What I'm hearing from you is to really leverage the full potential of an individual and a team. It's really two things. Number one, get that emotional trust between you and that individual and you and individually the team members, the individuals who comprise that team. But that emotional trust, what I'm hearing you say in and of itself is not enough. While you have that to really get the mission done, you have to make sure that they really understand the big picture vision and the objectives of the company itself, of why we're doing what we're doing, where we're heading, and why that's important. How am I doing with that?
I think that's absolutely online, Jeffrey. And aligning members of your team is going to create their engagement. That engagement is going to help you resolve employee loyalty or at least retention issues and provide more longevity. I always say that you want to be spending at least 20% of your time mentoring and coaching the people that are on your teams to replace you. And the ultimate idea here is you want them to be able to lead. So I have a 6-step rule with respect to this engagement and alignment with the mission. The first one is you need to be value added as a leader. So that people, they need to see you on your team being value added, whether that's providing the right guidance towards those objectives, whether that's assisting them with development, whether that's putting the pieces together or whatever it is to enable the team. You have to connect personally. We talked about that. And you use your understanding of the individual and the team, that connection that we talked about, to be able to translate those goals for the individuals. So that's number 3. Then the number 4 here is you have to listen to understand. Like really, a lot of people will listen just so that they can hear the, whatever it is, the feedback, but listening to understand is something completely different. Not so that you can make a response, not so that you can figure out what you have to do next. It's listening to understand so that you're there with the people and their goals. And that might cause you to adjust your goals, adjust how they are related, or adjust their specific performance pieces. And then when you're elevating that relationship, because that's the next step, you're going to elevate that relationship above. So even though you might have those goals, you might put them off in terms of time and space so that you can give the space for the development of those people. And the last thing is develop a common narrative, including some vocabulary. Narratives, I think, are important. The stories we tell are as important as having these great vision statements, and because to connect with those things. So, for example, I was charged with preparing our helicopter forces for Afghanistan back in 2008 for trying to get the soldiers that were driving on the roads off the roads so we could deploy Canadian helicopters and save some lives. Deploying those Chinook helicopters for the first time into Afghanistan was a pretty daunting task. I didn't have all the answers, but the leaders at the time, let's develop some key narratives to assign. There's these big strategic level things that the government of Canada wanted to achieve. But my commander at the time just said, get them off the roads. save lives. So to us, that became the fusion. How are we going to do this quicker? When I was commanding an air wing for the Royal Canadian Air Force, I had 3 words that I'd use all the time. It was fly, shoot, spend. Flying, because flying competence is what's going to create real capability in the aircraft. Shoot, because you have to be tactically lethal on the battle space to be able to defend the nation. But spend, because I didn't want the bureaucratic or administrative limitations of the government to get in the way of my people accomplishing their mission. I could translate those words and that vocabulary, that narrative, to the people on the ground.
What terrific insights that you're sharing out there. My goodness, Scott, so much of what you're sharing is right out of our playbook in terms of, okay, how do I grow my business? Well, the narrative, whether it's winning new clients, whether it's having an investor come in or a buyer come in those instances, believe it or not, and you better believe it, 80% of a company's value starts with the narrative. I've had valuators come on the podcast, Scott, and they say, Jeffrey, I don't even look at the financial statements until I hear that narrative. And if the narrative is a good one, 80% of my value is going to come from there. And yeah, sure, the audited statements, the financials, all those complicated formulas, yeah, I'll take a look at that. But that's really, relatively speaking, a small percentage of what's going into the value of the company. So you're spot on with that. And for our listeners, as you're hearing Scott share really these 6 rules that he has, does he come across as someone who's saying, hey, well, Jeffrey, I'm the CEO, I'm the president, you're going to respect me just because of my title? Or is he coming across as, hey, let me understand what's going on with Jeffrey. Let me get into his head. Let me see the world from his vantage point, and I'm going to work with him. I'm going to be his biggest raving fan. I'm going to cheer him on. Yes, I'll have to step in when I have to step in, but I'm going to really coach him, hence your book, Scott, of what you're doing and your principles there. But what a difference. And so for the listeners, and there's no judgment here with them, Scott, for that listener who's saying, well, wait a minute, I'm the owner of the company. I've earned my stripes, and anyone that I bring into my company, they should be grateful and thankful to me. And if I say jump, they should be saying how high, forget all that other stuff, because I'm signing their paycheck and they have their job and livelihood because of me. What would you say to that kind of thinking?
I'd say what I would say to any other leader that's having that rather dogmatic approach to leading is that you're using your positional authority and the transactional elements of that cost benefit analysis. I'm paying you and I want a service. And what you're going to get out of your employees and your organization are exactly what you put in. You're not going to get anything more. They're not going to go to the 10th degree for you unless they think it's in their own better interest. Therefore, at one point in time in the future, all of this is going to unravel when you try to ask for something beyond which is just outlined in that baseline transactional narrative. To me, this is why I find a lot of businesses are looking for purpose beyond the bottom line. I want to be a member of Walmart because of the way that it services our communities in times of emergencies, or philanthropy, whatever it is. We're going to be a green business. Whatever the value basis of these businesses, I think that you're finding business is, especially in the modern era, needs to have values that are beyond merely the bottom line. From a defense of the nation point of view, that translates the exact same way. At one point in time, you're here to defend the nation. So I'm going to order you away from your family for the 4th weekend in a row. At one point in time, this is going to fall on lame ears when it's the exact same reason that you're coming back to again and again and again. Wait a minute, it's not going to translate well. And that's why I think that for leaders that's in that position, I think that if they took a step back and became a little bit more self-aware about where the people at the bottom end of that chain are, that by developing them, by saying, hey, I've got an opportunity. I think I've really got a great business here. I want people to learn from me. How many excellent CEOs would that one CEO produce? I think of what an excellent organization is. And this is where I use this with my military compatriots who are struggling with retention. And they say, I don't want people to leave your organization. I said, hey, people leaving your organization, that's normal. They're going to leave. That's a fact. How do you want them to leave? Well, here's what you want. And I'm going to give you an image. Imagine if you were sitting down with a person who left or was in this organization, this business for 10 years. And someone was saying, oh, I'm thinking about taking a job with them. What do you think? You have to go work there. It gave me more opportunity than I ever had before. I learned so much. They actually said there's no room for growth here. And then they gave me the connections to move on. Wow. And I learned so much from that CEO. Like, he spends the time Okay, that's an organization that everybody wants to be a part of. You're going to attract the best people. You're going to want people to be working with you. So these are the kinds of things. If you focus on that development, on the development of those people, on the people that are working for you, that team will resonate clearly beyond just the individual business.
And Scott, what you're sharing with us is so spot on. Recently, there is a Glassdoor survey. And Glassdoor, that's the site where employees go and they rank their companies or their former companies, and it's very candid feedback. And they ran the survey, and what they wanted to find out what is either keeping you in the company or having you go to another company. And they gave a number of choices for people to choose from. Most people, when you ask them, what do you think the number one factor was? They'll say, oh, clearly, Jeffrey, money. Money is what keeps someone at a company. Money is what has someone go to a new company. Money was near the bottom of the list. At the top of the list, it was, what's the leadership like? What's their vision? What am I going to learn there as an individual? What's the company culture like? And really, with our own experiences, with guests that we've had on the podcast, even my own experience when I was bootstrapping my e-learning company, Embanet, I didn't have those budgets to pay these big dollars. People will leave higher paying opportunities, higher paying jobs to come into an organization that's not paying as much if they feel that, to your point earlier, Scott, hey, we're changing society, or I'm going to learn a whole lot here. This is a really rich and vibrant culture. And speaking of culture, I know in your book, Scott, you talk about this. So to get the most out of our team's creativity, you talk about 5 strategies that really make a difference for teams and the culture and how to get the most out of our people. Any insights, any tidbits that you can share with us?
Right. So I think that igniting team creativity is essential. Now, I think it's going to be based upon already having a good vision. So I'm not going to tell business leaders that are experts in setting business strategy. But so visioning is a thing. I've done some recording on this, and there's some stuff in my book on how to create good visioning. But if you want to ignite team creativity, here's a 5-tip kind of piece that I work for that. The first one is you need to set the stage well as a leader. And what I mean by that is don't limit their capacities. Don't limit their mental, this is what I want. I only want this. No, let them be bold, ignite their imaginations, be inspirational, and be as big as you possibly can with that. Because if you allow them to think big, they will give you ideas that are clearly beyond the box. Number 2, use keywords. We're back to this vocabulary, this narrative piece, taking keywords out of your vision and your narrative that will anchor the team into those, not limit their thought process, but rather anchor them so that they see, okay, yeah, these become the fundamental values that have to come through in this, whatever innovative, creative process they're in. And then ask open-ended questions. So that's number 2, is keywords and open-ended questions. Again, looking at being big. I always say number 3 is seek collaboration. What I say about this is very rarely when we step into something new, has this not been exposed before in academia, in a different type of business, in government or somewhere else. I go out and I seek those experts. A lot of times I would bring these into my team and my team would go, wow, you see this? Oh yeah, I coached with them and he had a thing. Okay, well and then they would ignite and inspire these things. So by seeking that collaboration, and then sometimes I would also bring 2 teams together that were focusing in on maybe different elements of the same problem. By collaborating, they have ideas on each other's problem sets. And all of a sudden you get more ideas, but also better integrated ideas. The 4th one here is I like to devolve or enable responsibility down. And I think this is one of the key elements out here, is that being creative, people say, I want to be part of this creative process. And a lot of times as leaders, the best way that you can be part and enable a creative process is not being there, right? You give that. And informal leaders are great here. People that you go, yeah, this is an inspiring person in here. I think they've got the skill set. Give them the opportunity to lead that team. Or say, you know what? I've given you the ideas, all the rest of the stuff. I want you guys to go away. And Jimmy, I kind of want you to shepherd this for me as they walk around, and let's bring me back some ideas here in a little bit. And I think you'll just be amazed that when you enable people like that and devolve that responsibility, what they give. And then the last one is I schedule updates. With no agenda. I know this is hard from a managerial point of view. Here's our project management updates. I want to see outputs on this. And if you're going to be creative, especially at the beginning of these processes, just schedule I want an update Tuesday, just where you're at. And other times, I also like to just drop by informally.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason
Mm-hmm.
why those two things work together is if you just drop by informally, you're going to come in the middle of something. You might be able to answer a bunch of questions really easily, really quickly for the team. And that might just re-inspire their imagination. I used to have a 3-star general who used to like to drop in, and I was working in the bowels of a headquarters, and he just drop in around the corner. Hey, Scott, what do you, well, sir, I had like 3 questions for you, and the team had 2 more like this. And all of a sudden he would just be having a conversation with us.
Mm-hmm.
And we would be writing and quoting him so that when we came to that, wow, okay, I never would have thought of that. But then he
Uh-huh.
mentioned it. I'm into this. So those are my kind of 5 ways in which I think you can be more creative as a leader.
What's terrific about that, Scott, it's asking us as leaders, we need to be vulnerable. We need to check our egos at the door. Hey, step aside. Let someone else do it. Yeah, they may fall down, but you know what? You're going to be there to pick them up, but you're also going to be accessible. You're not going to be in some ivory tower, and you're there, you're helping them. You're part of the process. You're part of the team. And that's really, I imagine, what would get things moving in terms of, yeah, we're going to accomplish this goal. And look at this. Scott's right on board with us. He's there and he's popping in and out and he's available and he's really supporting us. How am I doing with that? Am I on base, off base?
Absolutely. One of my mentors is Rick Finley. Lieutenant General Rick Finley was the senior Canadian in NORAD headquarters
Mm-hmm.
on the morning of 9/11. His
Mm-hmm.
name's actually on the headquarters building down there. And he taught me leadership by walking about. What he
Sure.
used to mean by that is just be out and about with the team. Yes, it's going to show your visibility, but more than anything else, having a pen and paper and just writing down those ideas, answering those questions for them, that allows for that frank conversation. And that engagement can be everything for the people on your teams.
Love it. Absolutely love that. And Scott, let me ask you this before we go into wrap up mode. Are there any topics that we haven't covered? Is there a message you'd like to get out to the community that we haven't yet spoken about, or a question I haven't asked?
No, I think that prime purpose for me behind this book and behind everything that I like to do is to give back.
Mm-hmm.
There's an element of service here in us developing leaders. I always say, I think the world needs better leaders and coaches.
Mm-hmm.
I hope that I can help people be both.
Mm-hmm.
Whether you're coaching your youth teams in the community or leading multinational complex business organizations, the same care, sincerity, the same leadership and empathetic coaching, these can all coexist at the same time in the same place. And we can lead people into combat or into the most biggest depths of business dealings, with the dire consequences, with the same kind of care and empathy that we can lead youth in the beginning stages of a T-ball game. And I think that by combining these coaching and leading skills and developing leaders that have these fundamentals, this is what's going to make the difference for our communities, for our world, for our countries.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And for our listeners, before we go into wrap up mode, again, in the show notes, there'll be a link. I encourage you to go to the show notes, click on the link, get the Developing Coaching Leaders book, and ask yourself for your organization, where are you with your leadership? How could you get some jet fuel to catapult it to the next level, and perhaps even bringing Scott in to mentor some of your leaders on how to develop this coaching style? Because it's very different than, okay, well, I'm the leader. My title says on the door that I'm the leader. Just do as I say as I do. End of story. That isn't, because post-pandemic and during the pandemic, we saw people were leaving terrible commutes and terrible bosses to find a better lifestyle, a better opportunity, a better job, a better company. And so really, as leaders, the onus is on us, not the other way around, to show everyone, to show a world-class team why they should be staying here and why we're going to be the ones that help elevate them to the next level. So with that said, Scott, I have the privilege, I have the pleasure to have our ritual here of asking the same question to every guest. And I know offline you're sharing, hey, Jeffrey, I've listened to some of the episodes, so I'm sure you're prepared for this, but I'll throw it out there anyways. It's a fun question. Think of the movie Back to the Future. And in the movie, you have that magical DeLorean car that can take you to any point in time. So Scott, it's tomorrow morning, you look outside your window, and this is where the fun begins. Not only is the DeLorean car curbside, the door is opened, it's waiting for you to hop on in, which you do, and you're now going back to any point of time, perhaps Scott as a young child, a teenager, whatever point in time that would be. What are you telling your younger self in terms of life lessons or life wisdom, or, hey, Scott, do this, but don't do that? What would that sound like?
That's really interesting. I think that's part of my personal journey. We talk a lot about leadership and coaching and a lot of these big ideas.
Sure.
But I wasn't necessarily the greatest leader when I was very young in my military career. I was probably way too brash, not a lot of tact, very loudmouthed, the kind of things that I wish I would have been more self-aware. So what I would say to myself is, you need to create space between the emotions that you're having, those reactions. And you can see me, Jeffrey, I'm a very energetic person, but what that caused is my emotions led to reactions that in many cases weren't serving me nor my teams well. And when I became more self-aware, create some space in there, I could make choices for my behaviors, and that developed skills that these are the ones that I wish people would have. So that's what I would tell myself.
Wow.
Be more self.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I love that. Create more space between your emotions, your reactions. You'll have better choices. I mean, my goodness, who hasn't been there? You know, we fly off the handle, or we just have this momentary lapse and we say things or we do things that we can't take back. What terrific advice. For our listeners, again, this is not gold. This is platinum that you're hearing today, not just with that way of being, but also for all these strategies and tips and tactics, Scott, that you shared with us. And on that note, Scott, what a wonderful way to close out this episode, because it's official. It's a wrap. Congratulations. You're absolutely fantastic. And as we absolutely love to say here at Deep Wealth, Scott, may you continue to thrive and prosper while you remain healthy and safe. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for having me, and thank you for what you do, Jeffrey.
The Deep Wealth experience was definitely a game changer for me.
This course is one of the best investments you will ever make, because you will get an ROI of 100 times that. Anybody who doesn't go through it will lose millions.
If you don't have time for this program, you'll never have time for a successful liquidity.
I mean, it was the best value of any business course I've ever taken. The money was very well spent.
Compared to when we first began, today I feel better prepared, but in some respects, maybe less prepared, not because of the course, but because the course brought to light so many things that I thought we were on top of that we need to fix.
I 100% believe there's never a great time for a business owner to allocate extra hours into his or her week or day. So it's an investment that will yield results today. I thought I will reap the benefit of this program in 3 to 5 years down the road. But as soon as I stepped forward into the program, my mind changed immediately.
There was so much value in the experience that the time I invested paid back so much for the energy that was expended.
The Deep Wealth experience compared to other programs is the top. What we learned is very practical. Sometimes you learn stuff that is great to learn, but you never use it. The stuff we learned from Deep Wealth experience, I believe is going to benefit us both.
I've done an executive MBA. I've worked for billion-dollar companies before. I've worked for smaller companies before I started my business. I've been running my business successfully now for getting close to a decade. We're on a growth trajectory. Reflecting back on the Deep Wealth, I knew less than 10% what I know now. Maybe close to 1% even.
Hands down, the best program in which I've ever participated. And we've done a lot of different things over the years. We've been in other mastermind groups, gone to many seminars, workshops, conferences, retreats, read books. This was so different. I haven't had an experience that's anything close to this in all the years that we've been at this. It's 5-star, A+.
I would highly recommend it to any super busy business owner out there. And Deep Wealth is an accurate name for it. This program leads to deeper wealth and happier wealth, not just deeper wealth. I don't think there's a dollar value that could be associated with such an experience and knowledge that could be applied today and forever.
Are you leaving millions on the table? Please visit www.deepwealth.com/success to learn more. If you're not on my email list, you'll want to be. Sign up at www.deepwealth.com/podcast. And if you enjoyed this episode, if it added value, if you walked away with some new insights and strategies, please leave a review on your favorite podcast channel. Reviews help us reach new listeners, grow the show, and continue to create content that you'll enjoy. And as we wrap up this episode, as always, please stay healthy and safe.